In the suburbs of Los Angeles, California, a man named Roy Waller, who suffers from OCD, lives alone in his spotless house. One morning, Roy wakes up early and goes around the house performing small rituals that have become a part of his identity before taking his medication. Roy completes every movement in threes as if any deviation might cause him to unravel. Roy feels safe in his house, surrounded by routines that protect him from the unpredictability outside. Literally, hence, instead of enjoying the beautiful bright morning by his pool, he critically examines it through his blinds. After completing each of his tedious morning routines perfectly, Roy leaves the house and drives to his office, where his laid-back, chatty, and sociable partner Frank Mercer waits for him. Despite the contrast between them, Frank's respect for his mentor is obvious. How did these two polar opposites become friends? While waiting for Roy, Frank makes phone calls to unsuspecting individuals and sets up short cons.
You're a guaranteed winner of one of 3 fabulous prizes. Have you ever won anything major before?
No, never.
Well, you have now.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
No, it's confirmed.
As soon as Roy enters the office, Frank passes him the phone and connects him to a woman named Irene, who has just been convinced that she won an amazing gift. Roy introduces himself as Frank's supervisor and drives the ploy home. Roy and Frank then drive to an elderly couple's home and pose as federal agents from the Trade Commission.
He said that there'd been a contest and I had won a prize, that there would be a drawing next week and I would win either a Chevy Blazer, a diamond necklace, or a trip to Italy or France, I don't remember.
As their conversation successfully concludes, the couple accidentally leaves the door open, through which the sun shines, illuminating the room. However, for Roy, all he can think of is the sun glaring on his face, and his calm facade starts to crack. As his anxiety rises uncontrollably and Roy's tics flare up, Frank, who's familiar with the warning signs, steps in, wraps up their meeting, and escorts his partner out. Something tells me this isn't Frank's first rodeo. As they head back, Frank sympathizes with Roy in his daily struggles and wonders how a man who bases his whole identity on controlling every aspect of his environment fails to control the insanity in his own mind. Or does one drive the other? Despite Frank's inability to answer his complex questions, he steps in and advises Roy to stick to his medication. At the office, after the duo divides the money from their latest con, Frank suggests doing a long con on a local shady businessman named Chuck Frechette. However, Roy passionately refuses to participate and reiterates his rule of only doing short cons. Later, Roy goes to the supermarket, buys the same brand and the same number of cigarettes and canned tuna like he always does. Then, despite seeing multiple free checkout counters, he waits in a long queue in front of his regular cashier and pays for his items. That evening, Roy returns to his lifeless house and deposits the day's payment in his large ceramic dog money box, where he keeps his gun and petty cash. Then, he sits alone on his kitchen table where he eats a can of tuna for dinner while smoking cigarettes. Once finished, Roy neatly disposes of the can and retires for the night, only to repeat the same routines the next day. The next morning, as Roy looks out onto his pool as always, he sees some dead leaves in it and takes time to pull them out. Once finished, as Roy carefully disposes of the leaves in the garbage disposal, he accidentally flushes his tablets down. All hell breaks loose in Roy's mind. A full-blown mental war. Utter insanity. Hoping to regain some control, Roy retracts the only way he knows how, locking himself in his house for the next week and cleaning every inch of it. Until the wall color fades and the air starts to reek of cleaning products. A week later, worried for his partner who's been ignoring his numerous voicemails, Frank shows up at Roy's house and insistently bangs on the door. Despite being annoyed by the intrusion, Roy lets Frank in after ordering him to take his shoes off.
Hey, would you watch the rug? You're spilling food in...
What?
You didn't take your shoes off.
Okay, I'm taking the shoes off. Okay, buddy, I'm taking them off. See, they're off. The shoes are off.
Frank calms Roy down and comforts him. After seeing the rapid deterioration in his partner, Frank makes a few calls and gets him an appointment with a therapist named Dr. Harris Klein.
But this is it now. I gotta make some money.
Frank, would you wipe that thing off when you're done with it? Wipe the receivers. Wipe it off.
A few days later on the day of his appointment, Roy is filled with trepidation but is forced to fight through it and heads to the clinic because of his need for a prescription. Citing that his medical ethics prohibit him from giving out random prescriptions without thoroughly assessing patients, Dr. Harris forces Roy to open up.
I don't like being outdoors, which I know is called agoraphobia, right?
Incorrectly, but yes. Anything else?
Satisfied, Dr. Harris gives Roy a week's worth of new trial medication and sends him on. after setting up a weekly appointment. That evening, after having talked about his failed marriage in therapy, Roy becomes consumed with the urge to call and connect with his ex-wife Heather Fenton, but fails to summon his courage. Roy chain smokes through his tuna dinner, which he doesn't even taste, and feels betrayed by the nicotine that has failed to calm him. After hours of a mental tug-of-war, Roy finally gets Heather's number, picks up the phone to make the call, but hesitates and puts it down a dozen times before finally dialing the number. However, when Heather answers, all the courage Roy built over the last few hours suddenly abandons him, and he hangs up on her. On his appointment with Dr. Harris, Roy asks the therapist to call Heather on his behalf to see how she's doing, but more importantly, to learn the fate of the child she was carrying. Once Roy manages to convince the hesitant doctor, who doesn't want to get over-involved in his patients' lives, Roy leaves as he is too nervous to even witness the call. That afternoon, Roy receives a phone call that changes his life and answers a question that has been haunting him for the last 14 years. His mind races, but in a different direction this time, as it tries to process the overwhelming news.
Does she want to speak with me?
No, she doesn't. I'm sorry. Angela wants to talk to you, though.
Who?
Angela, your daughter. She knows you're her father, and she says she really wants to meet you.
I gotta admit, Roy is taking the news a lot better than I expected him to. Roy's tics flare and he chain smokes on his way to the park to meet Angela, the daughter he never even knew he had, for the first time in 14 years. Suddenly, he finds himself paying extra attention to the kids on the street and the happy family spending quality time together at the park. His mind races. Could that be in his near future? Or will his mental prison drive Angela away, ending his fatherhood before it even gets started? A few hours and packets of cigarettes later, Roy notices a teenage girl skateboarding past his car and looking around as if she's waiting for someone. Roy holds his breath for a moment, slowly gets out of his car, approaches Angela, and introduces himself.
Angela?
You, Roy?
Yeah.
At the diner, as the duo gets to know each other, Roy becomes fascinated with Angela's free-spirited mannerisms and infectious energy. Despite the tics and tsunamis of emotions in his mind, Roy keeps a calm composure and spends a few hours with his daughter.
Mom tell you that?
At first she told me you were dead. Then she said you might as well be.
I'm not dead. I'm in antiques.
Then, on the drive back, Angela curiously inspects everything in the car from the glove box to the sun visors and brings chaos to Roy's ordered world. However, instead of freaking out and losing his mind, Roy takes a deep breath, gets his looming panic in check, and calmly informs the teenager to keep everything as is.
Hey. I have things a certain way.
Who is this Roy? Then, Roy gives a caring but awkward goodbye hug to Angela, which she finds entertaining and sees her off. Roy returns to the office where he finds Frank convincing unsuspecting individuals to buy overpriced water purification systems on the phone. Surprisingly, Roy doesn't jump on the call to drive the sale, nor does he rush to the bathroom to aggressively scrub the teenager's writing from his palm. Instead, he stands in the center, smiling genuinely and lovingly tracing his daughter's phone number on his palm. Frank spots Roy's unusual calm demeanor and fears that his partner's off his meds and losing his mind. To make matters more confusing for Frank, Roy shares that he has changed his mind and wants to revisit Frank's long con idea. Utterly delighted to have the mastermind on board, Frank hangs up his call and thanks Roy. Then, all the excitement drives Frank to give Roy a hug, which causes Roy to stiffen like a frozen corpse and violently twitch. Cursing himself for violating Roy's no physical touch rule, Frank profusely apologizes and calms his partner down. Later, Roy and Frank drive to a local restaurant and observe Chuck from afar while Frank narrates everything he knows about the shady businessman. After listening intently, Roy designs the con.
We'll pull the Jamaican switch on him. He knows you, so you're a rope. I'm inside. You think he knows anything about international finance?
Roy then heads to the local bank where he keeps a safety deposit box full of cash and withdraws a large sum of money in pounds sterling. That evening, Roy carefully chooses his suits to pull off the wealthy international banker look and practices a few catchphrases to make him sound as casual and as confident as possible. After completing all his preparation smoothly, Roy prepares to head out to execute the first phase of the expertly planned con. I wish day-to-day life was this easy for Roy. Roy then receives a call from Frank and agrees to meet him at Chuck's favorite gentleman's club. However, before Roy can conclude the conversation, he hears his doorbell ringing and freezes in fear. Wondering who could be at his door at this time of night, Roy hangs up the call, moves across the living room as if he's walking through a minefield, looks out through the blinds, and finally breathes a sigh of relief as he sees Angela waving at him. Roy opens the door in 3 moves, orders her to take her shoes off, and lets her in. As soon as she enters, the teenager explains that she had a fight with her mother and asks Roy if he can stay for the night. Roy accepts his daughter's request and proceeds to leave.
You want me to pick you up something on the way back?
New York Super Fudge Chunk. That's my favorite flavor.
New York.
Super Fudge Chunk.
Oh, chocolate, yeah.
Roy arrives at the strip club, spots Chuck from afar, and soon the ploy starts. Meanwhile, at the house, having nothing else to do and hoping to learn as much as she can about her father, Angela goes through every inch of the house and curiously inspects everything from her father's music collection to his chest drawers, his closet, and his giant ceramic dog, while smoking his cigarettes and trying on his shades. Boy, am I glad Roy's not here to witness this. At the strip club, Chuck approaches Frank as planned, and the fish is finally hooked.
He's peaked. You good to go?
Is it poo-poo in the woods?
Just say yes.
After making sure Chuck is observing them from afar, Frank and Roy loudly schedule to see each other the next morning and go their separate ways. On his way back, psyched to have Angela waiting for him at home, Roy stops at his regular supermarket, buys a tub of his daughter's favorite ice cream, checks it out at Kathy's counter, and rushes home. There, Roy finds Angela asleep on the couch and quietly covers her with a blanket.
Roy, why did Mom leave you?
Well, you have to ask her that.
I did. She said she didn't want to talk about it.
Touched by that comment, Roy lightly cleans the living room and retires to his bed. The next morning, Roy wakes up to a small chaos with no way of carrying out his routine.
Someone's in here!
To add to the chaos, Frank arrives at the house unannounced and bangs on the door. Hoping to keep his 2 lives separate, Roy talks to his partner, who wants to discuss their next move on the long con out on the front lawn. Roy expertly postpones all his plans for the day and sends Frank on his way. Inside, Roy cooks some eggs for Angela, who completely dismisses them and instead opts for the tub of ice cream. During breakfast, Angela criticizes the lack of food variety in the house before taking the tub of ice cream to the now messy living room to call her mother. Roy loses his appetite to the overwhelming events of the morning, neatly discards his breakfast and follows the teenager, who nonchalantly sits on her couch bed, eating ice cream, and asks him if she can stay with him until summer school starts in 4 days. Sensing the looming collapse of his sanity, Roy rushes to Dr. Harris's office where he has a panic attack. The doctor expertly calms down Roy, and soon the formal session begins.
Most of all, you have to make sure they eat their vegetables, don't stay up too late, don't watch too much TV. And otherwise, just try to be as honest and open with them as possible.
Afterwards, Roy takes Angela shopping at the supermarket, and the duo buys a variety of foods. That evening, Roy and Angela have a blast cooking dinner together. Then, to check if the pasta is ready, Roy takes a piece out of the boiling water and throws it at his kitchen walls, while describing his methods to his daughter. Once it's ready, Roy follows a special recipe and cooks the pasta with basil. Then, he serves himself his usual can of tuna while he proudly serves the pasta to Angela. However, the sauceless basil pasta fails to impress the teenager, and soon Roy orders her a pizza, which she excitedly engulfs. While Angela enjoys the pizza, Roy lovingly watches her through the haze of his cigarette smoke and wonders what he has done to deserve such happiness. The next morning, while waiting for Angela to finish her very long shower, Roy runs late for the first time ever and rushes out to a meeting with Chuck and Frank without even thinking about his tedious routines once. To put the cherry on top, Chuck and Roy unexpectedly bond.
You have a daughter?
2, 15 and 12.
Oh, wonderful. I have a 14-year-old.
It's a riot, huh?
Yeah, and everything smells like gum. Hey, how do you get him out of the house? Because mine just sits at home all day, and
High from the adrenaline rush of perfectly executing the ploy, Roy decides to introduce Angela to Frank and takes his partner home. However, once he gets there, he's disappointed to see that his daughter's not there. As Roy frantically searches for Angela in every room of the house, Frank, who's calmly observing him, casually reminds him to take off his shoes. My, how the tables have turned. Later, Roy stays up late into the wee hours of the night, worried sick for his daughter and waiting for her to return. As the night grows, he sits in the living room continuously clicking the pool light switch in rhythmic sets of 3. After a few hours, Roy hears Angela sneaking into the house, and a fight ensues.
Jeez, you're worse than Mom.
Angela, listen, I'm glad I met you. I'm glad we met. I really am. But I've got a business, and I've got a partner, and I've got things a certain way, and that's it.
Feeling rejected by her father, a tearful Angela storms out of the house and attempts to go back to her mother's house. Despite being furious at his daughter for her irresponsibility, this sight breaks Roy's heart, and he chases after her, hoping to repair everything.
You're just like one of her boyfriends. I'm just something you have to deal with in order to screw her.
Angela, you know that's not true.
As Roy smokes his cigarettes, Angela enjoys her pizza and is awed to learn that her father's a con artist. She then curiously bombards him with questions and tries to learn as much as she can about the trade. By the end of the night, Angela convinces Roy to do something he never thought he would.
What?
Teach me something, a con. Why not?
Because you're a bright, innocent, beautiful girl. I'm not going to screw that up like everything else.
The next morning, Roy takes Angela on a makeshift training session and starts by giving her some advice.
The one thing you can control, though, is who you mark. Never play somebody who isn't buying what you're selling.
The duo then buys a lotto ticket, and as they prepare to choose their mark, Roy gives his daughter more expert advice. Roy then designs the perfect con. Roy and Angela head into a laundromat.
Oh, honey, you dropped something. Looks like somebody put it through the wash by accident. It's yesterday's drawing. That looks like the second, don't you think?
We won $600.
No, it's okay. I'm supposed to be home anyway.
No. We're in this 50-50.
By the end, the poor, sweet woman withdraws $300 from her account and hands it to Angela. Excited by her achievements, Angela runs to the car and reunites with her father, who decides to teach her a valuable lesson.
There's one last thing.
What?
I want you to give her the money back. Angela,
What?
I would not be a responsible father if I let you get away with this. Let's go.
A few days later, Roy sees Angela off to summer school and visits his therapist for a session. There, as he shares about Angela and his new fatherhood journey, he paces around the room, unable to contain his excitement and utter joy. To put the cherry on top, Roy announces that for the first time in his life, he's not crippled by fear. It seems fatherhood has broken Roy out of his mental prison. Happy for his patient, Dr. Harris congratulates Roy and shares how proud he is of him and the progress he has made. Then, as the session continues, Roy shares his latest experience with Angela.
Gee, and I wasn't exactly sure how Angela was going to go for it, but she took right to it, like a duck to water. She took right to it. She even helped out. You know, this 14-year-old girl.
A few days later, Frank and Roy go to the airport to scope it out, and Roy plans the final phase of the long con in detail. After hearing the ingenious plan, Frank expresses his deep admiration for Roy's brilliance and mischievously hugs and kisses him in premature celebration of their wealth. Surprisingly, Roy doesn't fall apart, but just brushes Frank off and moves on. Later, as Roy pays for his purchases at the supermarket, he confidently introduces himself to Kathy. At home, Roy finds a voicemail from Angela, informing him that she will finish summer school in a few days. Roy sits in front of his unusually full fridge and smiles alone, in the dark, while replaying the sincere voicemail on repeat. On the final day of summer school, Roy is among the first parents to arrive at the school and eagerly waits for his daughter, whom he has missed dearly. A few minutes later, Angela arrives at the car and energetically greets him. Then, following Angela's choice, the father-daughter duo heads to a bowling alley for an afternoon of bowling. As they start a game, Roy is overwhelmed by utter joy and is forced to stand back and take in the preciousness of the moment, while beaming proudly at his daughter. However, all this bliss is soon interrupted by a frantic Frank, who informs Roy that Chuck is flying to the Cayman Islands that afternoon and rushes to meet him at the airport to finish the last phase of the long con. Roy panics for a moment, mentally going through the long list of unfinished tasks for the con, and rushes Angela out of the bowling alley. Seeing her dad frantically trying to work out everything, Angela bravely volunteers to help on the con and convinces Roy to take her along with him. First, Roy and Angela head to the bank, and as Roy signs his way into the safety deposit boxes, Angela joins him and tries to find out how the system works. Realizing that Angela's his only family, Roy puts her on the signature list for his safety deposit box.
Can I add an access signature to my account, please?
Oh, certainly.
When do I get that?
You know, when I'm dead. And you wait here. I mean it.
Roy then privately goes to his deposit box and withdraws a suitcase full of pound sterlings and heads to the airport. As they get out of the car, Roy warns his daughter to escape and save herself if anything goes wrong and gives her a wad of cash. Then the carefully crafted con is put to play.
That's 80,000? Looks like a lot less than I thought.
It always does.
For another 30 minutes, give me a goddamn... You touch me! You touch me, I'll break every glass in this place! Hey!
Hope she's not on my flight. Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, it's about that time.
Once the bags are safely exchanged, Roy orders Frank to follow Chuck and make sure he boards his flight. Roy then collects his bags and uses the stairs to go to the parking lot, where his daughter waits for him. Upon seeing him, Angela excitedly rambles on about how well she executed her role. Then, once she finds out that Roy has conned Chuck out of $80,000, she jumps up and down praising him for his excellence. Roy and Angela get into the car, and as they proceed to happily sail off into the sunset, everything unravels. Angela screams at the top of her lungs as she sees Chuck furiously running towards them. As Roy tries to speed away, Chuck jumps on his car and demands to be given his money. Roy steers as hard as he can to throw the angry businessman off his car and speeds to the parking booth.
Come on.
I understand that, sir.
Keep the change, okay?
We're not allowed to accept gratuity.
It's not gratuity, it's kindness.
Are you out of your mind? Sir! Excuse me!
After the chaotic exit, Frank and Roy meet at the prearranged spot and try to figure out what went wrong.
What if he goes to the cops, man?
He won't, they never
What
do.
if he does?
We're not on the books. We're safe.
No, we are. What about her?
All right, tell him, Angela, let's get this over with. Tell him you're clean. You've never been arrested, have you?
Angela explains that it was just a one-time shoplifting offense, but Roy doesn't want to hear it. Distressed, Roy's tics flare up as he drives Angela to her neighborhood and tells her off.
What's that? What's that?
I got it for you at the airport. I paid for it.
Roy spends the next few days locked in his house, wallowing in heartbreak and sadness. Then one afternoon, Roy prepares to take his medication and realizes that he has run out. Then Roy goes into full panic mode.
Are you at his office now?
I'm sorry, sir.
Desperate, Roy digs through his trash to find the packet of the medication and fights his now full-blown tics as he speeds to the pharmacy. There, Roy gets more than he bargained for.
What?
This packet contains supplements, sir.
No. My doctor gave those to me. They're prefect.
They're supplements.
Outraged by the discovery, Roy storms into Dr. Harris's office a few days later and confronts him. Then the conversation unexpectedly turns to Roy's profession, which the doctors suggest might be contributing to the worsening of his neurosis. Then the doctor brings up Angela, a topic that triggers Roy. With his tics flaring uncontrollably and now stuttering, Roy confesses that he has wronged his daughter and cries his eyes out.
Honey, I'm sorry. I should have asked you first, but I'd have to make a lot of changes. For one thing, I'd have to stop doing what I do for a living. Yes, I'll try.
Warned by the way Angela accepts his proposition, Roy invites Frank over for drinks, informs him that he's retiring from his craft, and gifts him his share from the latest con as a parting gift. As their partnership unceremoniously liquidates, Roy and Frank solemnly tell each other how much they care for one another and bid each other farewell. A few nights later, Roy and Angela go out for dinner and have a blast. However, all the good times disappear when they get home and find a sinister intruder.
Go wait in your room, honey.
Let her stay. She's in this as much as you are.
Then the whole ordeal escalates beyond imagination.
There were no cameras in the lounge.
No, there were in the gift shop. But first things first, let's have back the money you took from me.
I don't have it.
Well, let's start with what you do have.
4,000, maybe.
Where?
Run, Angela! Run!
You run and Daddy's dead, and I mean right now!
Okay, Angela. No, put the gun down, sweetheart.
Shoot him.
Quiet, Frank. Angela. Okay,
Shoot him.
Okay,
God damn it, shoot him.
Okay. It's okay.
Roy calms down the hysterical teenager, orders Frank to take her to Heather's house, and advises him to skip town, while he opts to stay back and take the gravely injured Chuck to the hospital. Roy then heads into the house to clean up the scene, but is shocked to see that Chuck is no longer where he left him. However, before he can process this, Chuck comes out of nowhere and knocks him out. Roy wakes up the next morning and finds himself cuffed to a hospital bed. Before he can even register his environment, a couple of detectives introduce themselves, inform him that Chuck had succumbed to his injuries, and ask him where Frank and Angela are. Utterly confused as to the events that led to this moment, and hoping to protect his daughter at all cost, Roy confesses to shooting Chuck, but the detectives don't buy it. As a result, Roy's mind starts to race once again, thinking about his daughter's safety and future. Firmly believing that he has to do everything he can to save Angela, he negotiates with the detectives and convinces him to let him speak to Dr. Harris.
Hey, just make a phone call for me, all right? Please. You tell Angela the passcode, and then you tell her to write it down.
59.
Doc.
Oh, 543
and 7.
As the doctor rushes out, Roy tells himself that Angela is going to be okay 3 times. A few hours later, Roy wakes up drenched in sweat and slowly leaves his bed to ask the detectives to turn on the air conditioner, but is confused to find no one around. He then steps out and realizes that the police have disappeared and that his hospital room is a dressed-up freight container on the rooftop of a top building. As everything comes crashing down on him, Roy rushes to the therapist's office and finds it's empty. He then goes to the bank and finds all of his money gone. Roy then finds a letter from Frank that explains everything. Everything he's known in the past few months has been a lie, and everyone he's met has been an actor trained to execute Frank's long con. Flabbergasted by everything, Roy visits Heather at her house.
She's not here, is she? You were pregnant. You were pregnant.
I lost it.
This revelation hurts Roy the most and tears him apart. As they say, there's no honor among thieves. A year later, Roy works as a salesman at a local carpet store, where Angela comes in with her boyfriend to buy some carpet and runs into him.
What's up? I think I left my wallet. Yeah, I left my wallet in the car. Do you think you could go get it?
Yeah.
No, I'm retired. That was a one-time deal.
You changed your hair. Makes you look grown up.
I am grown up.
Later, after he finishes his shift, Roy drives home, opens the front door in one slick movement, and smiles as he sees the dinner table set. He then lovingly greets his pregnant wife Kathy, who's preparing a family dinner and prepares to help her, with a glimmer of hope in his eyes for the future.